creative process with Vince Ornato. Vince is a professional Pittsburgh artist that works in many mediums. And now Vince is going to share his creative process with you.
Hi everybody, this is Vince Ornato again. I'm going to do a little demonstration lecture today about painting on location. What I've decided, there's a grassy area here in the park and a few trees, and there's a driveway in the background, and that's what my composition is going to be today. One of the things I want to talk about, this is a very, very rough canvas because it's actually a board. It's similar to masonite. It's sort of a wooden clapboard, but I gessoed it with a very thick texture, and I'll get into more that type of thing in other shows. How do you gesso stuff and so on. You can actually buy these in art stores. They're a very clean, smooth surface gesso. They're already pre-done for you, and I use those for a lot of years. Now notice also, this is a warm color, and that's what I'm going to use today, and I'll explain why in a minute. This is a cool toned color, as you can see, you know, warm, cool, and it's something to think about a lot while you're painting. Don't always think as much as green and blue and red and so on as you do as warm and cool. The other thing about the tone, it's not real vibrant. It's not, you might call it dull even. It's not a real bright red or a bright purple, but that's so that you kind of have a neutral that you're working with on your tone. So those are a couple of the elements that are going to come into play today. The scene that I'm painting has a bulk of cool colors in it. And I usually use the opposite tone of the dominant warm or cool in the painting, in the scene. There's a lot of greens, trees, and so on. Bluish greens, and those are cool colors. There's a gray driveway in this. So because of that, I'm using the warm. And what that does, if you use the opposite behind it, it charges the color up a little bit better for you. You see here, what I did, I had an 8x10 mat, and I cut it to make 2 L's, okay, obviously. So what this does for the artist is you can much more easily determine your composition when you look through the, we'll call it a viewfinder. It's like a homemade viewfinder. I used to measure all this out with math and everything, and then it just dawned on me one day, all I need to do is hold it up against my canvas to get the right proportion, and then I can look over at my subject to determine what I want to do. Now, one thing about that, don't be overly rigid with this. It's just a guide, it's just a help. You can drive yourself crazy thinking about all these kind of technical things, and you start being kind of held hostage to them. You can overdo it that way. It's just a guide. You want to be loose and free. That's one of the reasons I'm standing when I paint. It's a much more active and healthier position as opposed to sitting down. Now you see how large this palette is down here. This is what I have in my studio. I brought it out today because I knew I'd be talking, and you know, it's just a little easier for me to deal with this show today using this. And this is what I used to bring out all the time when I painted, and I did it for years, and it's actually very nice to work with while you're painting on location because you have such a lot of room. I put the same colors in the same spot on the palette, and I learned a lot about that with Daniel Green, and I think most artists do it. It's sort of like keys on a piano. You're setting them up in the same position. Imagine if a B and a C and a G sharp were in different places. Every time you went down to play piano, it'd be impossible. So the more you can keep the colors in the same spot, the easier it is for the flow and all. On the palette, I'm going to be mixing and placing the colors where on the palette where they actually go in general in the painting. I picked up that tip in The Art Spirit by Robert Henry. It's a very, very famous art book. But if you place the colors on-site painting on the palette where they actually go in the composition, it's much like the piano keys situation. You can get a much better flow going. I tend to have warm brushes and cool brushes. That's the way I divide up in my mind again. That's like we were saying earlier about that. I'm going to begin by laying out my paint. And when I do it, it's funny because you can kind of look at the palette at some point and it looks like it's actually a painting. So I'm going to do that now, and then it's like all set up. My piano keys are all set up, and then I can start drawing and then just go into it from there. So, okay, I'm going to do that right now. I should add too, one of the real benefits of painting on location for all the people that only copy photos, which I use photos, that's another lecture, but when you paint on site, you really see the wide variety of nature. It's almost mind-blowing, the variety of colors. If you think of a rainbow, we think there's these 7 colors, but if you keep looking at it, you see that those initial stripes you think you see are really gradual tones, one leading into the other, and there's literally hundreds and hundreds of tones and colors in a rainbow. So what I'm going to do now is start this drawing. I'm going to use a little bit of regular turpentine just to make the paint a little more liquid and begin. It's important to understand I'm not making a trees. I'm giving you the illusion of trees. This is not exact. This is not a tree I'm making. It's a painting of a tree. So I don't have to get hung up on every little perfect detail. Hence the impression, the impression of what I'm doing here. A lot of the process of this is something I want you to focus on more than like some of the technical artistic side of it. Notice how I'm holding the brush. Do not hold it like a pen. You're really painting with your body, as I said. You're not painting with your hand per se, you're painting with your body. Okay, let's get so I got some of the dark shadows on the ground there. Now, as Federico Fellini, the famous Italian director, said, I'm a liar, but I'm an honest one. The grass part, actually, compositionally, on the bottom of this painting, it should be in shadow, but I'm going to lie and make it the very bottom. That comes later, because that brightness will pop forward if I make it in the sunlight. That'll pop forward, causing a foreground, and push everything behind it as in a background. So like Fellini, I'm a liar, but I'm an honest one, because that'll make for a better painting. So I have a warm toned canvas, 8x10, with a very rough surface on purpose. And right now at this point, it's really just two colors, raw umber and green. And I'm going to make a red note for the first time in that far background. Now I'm painting red on red and it's coming out purple, that's why. You know, it's a reddish color with some blue in it, just a very, very, very little bit of blue. It's looking purplish. There are some shadows on that red, and again, I'm painting the darks. So that's my note for now. One of the things that happens when you paint, everybody, including me, we always want to run to the light. Boy, oh boy, don't we? But you can't get ahead of yourself. The reason is you want strong tones all through, mid-tones. The darks are easy to see. Once you get into the mid-tone area, boy, we all want to rush it. You know, we all want to get going and get to the light. And that's a problem. And that's part of the discipline of this. You got to be careful, because if you do it too early, you don't have strong enough foundation in mid-tones to hold everything together. If you look at the painting now, I would say, maybe 50% of the I keep saying canvas, but it's a board. 50% of it is filled, 50% of it is empty. And you can almost, looking at it now, because the value of the board, the light quality of it, the value is dark and light quality of any color, is pretty much lighter than everything on there. So that'll give you an idea of where I'm heading right away, even though the color is wrong. You know, the color is the tone of the canvas. So I've laid in my darks. I'm starting to head towards some mid-tones. And I began with the darkest dark in the painting. So I'm starting to head towards the mid-tones. And I'm dying to get to the light, which is what, like I said, we always want to do. But you can't rush it because you want to have a nice foundation. Okay, I am actually going to get a different brush out because that whitish green is so different than the yellowish green that it calls for a different brush. This is really strange to me. The grass area was clearly a yellow-green for most of the time. Now it's, because there's a little bit of cloud filter, it's starting to look like that whitish green, and I'm going to have to make a decision. So what I've decided, the further away the grass is in the sunlight, that's going to be a whitish green. The closer it is, it's going to be a yellower green. And again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that's what I've decided. I think for this painting, it'll make it a better painting. And that's a good time to point out what I'm saying about on location. Even a photograph is a lie. A photograph is a bunch of ink on a piece of paper, just like a painting is a bunch of pigment on a pulp. You know, it's not really a photo, it's not really a car, it's a photo of a car, it's an illusion. So, you know, much like everybody, when I started out with this, I thought you were actually supposed to, the better you can make it look precisely like the subject, that's the better the painting. That's not necessarily true. Because what is the subject? You know, the sunlight's constantly moving. Clouds are coming and going. All artists that work on site will tell you about the big truck that pulls up and parks right in front of your subject when you're halfway into the painting. So what is the subject really? Well, this scene triggered something in my mind. That's what I'm painting. I'm going to put in that this foreground area, the yellow, the cadmium yellow sunlight, which I've been dying to do. Yay, I get to do it. And it'll give you an idea. See, that's even too dark. So I'm really going to go for it. A lot of what happened when I get back in the studio, I'm often, I guess I'll say impressed. These pieces often turn out better than I thought they were, because by the time I'm done with it, I've looked at it so much that it's hard for me to be objective. And the sense of satisfaction often happens later. One of the things you think, kind of like a mosaic, that's sort of what I did here. This is back to my umber color, and I'm going to be closing in on that driveway. So this is kind of, believe it or not, this whole painting has been leading up to this area here. It's kind of weird to think of that, because it's a small portion of the painting. It calls for the ruler. Where it is, okay. Now for the first time I'm stepping back. Usually I will have stepped back more. As I do that, and one of the things I do, I turn them upside down a lot to see. Okay. I gotta just darken a couple values and that'll be it for the day. When I turned it upside down, there didn't seem to be enough dark areas in the painting based on what I'm looking at in nature. One last stroke and I am finished for today's demo. And this is what I did today for the demonstration. And like I said, I will be taking it back in the studio, take a little bit of a break, clear my head, and make some finishing touches on it. And thanks for watching.